A very good evening and welcome in the ring. Happy Monday evening to each and every one of you. A very happy Monday evening. Wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us on Twitter, you're joining us on YouTube, you're joining us on Facebook, we want to wish you a happy Monday evening. Especially, we have a very special program. It's an In the Ring special. We are talking about the PPP's political agenda, the victimization and prosecution of Guyanese. And we invite you, as per normal, to share our live stream, to sit back and take in the information that we have put together for you this evening. Valid and credible information. We welcome each and every one of you. We're going to have some folks who are going to be stopping by this evening, and we want their full participation as well as your participation. And we always ask that when you come on, that you share the live stream. For our folks on Twitter, we are so happy again that so many of you keep joining us almost on a weekly basis, that so many of you are engaging this live feed on Twitter, that so many of you are retweeting and are making comments. We are so grateful for your viewership at that end, and also for the folks who are joining us on YouTube. Quite a few persons now picking us up on YouTube, and we're grateful for that. You see, folks have their smartphones, their smart television. This is the information superhighway. This is the information age, and we are so privileged to be with you via this media on Twitter, on Facebook. Very soon we'll be on LinkedIn, and we'll be also live streaming simultaneously to Instagram as well. And so we look forward for what those platforms are going to offer us in the near future. For the time being, we're on Twitter. You can search for Sherrod Duncan on Twitter, Sherrod Avery Duncan on Twitter. Search for Sherrod Duncan on YouTube, and you can search also for Sherrod Avery Duncan on Facebook, my Facebook page. And we're streaming on several other Facebook pages as well, folks. We are going to be joined this evening by a few other folks as we discuss this whole issue of the PPP's political agenda, the victimization and prosecution of Guyanese. And let me welcome right off the bat one of our parliamentarian, the Honorable 𝐒𝐏𝐄𝐂 𝐑𝐢𝐧𝑠. 𝐒𝐏𝐄, very good evening and welcome. I
Hello.
think this is your in the ring.
Yes. A pleasant good evening to you, Sherrod.
A
Nice to have you
pleasant good
here, and a
evening.
pleasant good
Yeah,
evening to all the viewers. It's a privilege for us to be together so that we can discuss important matters.
exactly, 𝐒𝐏𝐄. And let's start off the bat. And I see folks are now joining us, so we may have to
Yes,
repeat ourselves
give
a
them
little
some time.
later on. And that's what happens when people come to class late. Let's bring our viewers up to date with what is happening. What is the latest with Mr. David Patterson, the prosecution and victimization of Mr. David Patterson? 𝐒𝐏𝐄, what do you know at this hour?
Well, I'm aware that he was at the court today and
Yeah.
he was placed on bail.
Yes, he
Um,
was placed on
and
$200,000 bail, to be specific. Go right ahead, 𝐒𝐏𝐄.
yes, $200,000 bail, and we will continue as a coalition to stand firm and stand behind our comrade, even as the PPP continue to pelt their pandemic of vindictiveness on Guyanese.
Precisely. And Mr. Patterson was charged formally this morning with fraud. As we said, as 𝐒𝐏𝐄 said, he was placed on bail, $200,000 bail, and he is to return to court on February 2021. You see, PPP campaigned on a lot of things. What they did not campaign on is that what were the true motives, victimization and prosecution of our Guyanese people.
That is so true. Um, they did not tell the Guyanese people that they had no intention. Um, Sharon, I see person saying there's no sound. Could you check in the comment section?
Let me see. I am hearing you clearly. I have sound at my end. 𝐒𝐏𝐄, you want to do me a favor and just sign out and maybe come back in, and let's see if it's maybe your song or it's my song, because I'm hearing you and you're hearing me, but I am not
Yeah.
too clear on what
All
else is
right.
happening.
I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll leave and come back in.
All right. Thanks very much, 𝐒𝐏𝐄. Folks, we are going to try to adjust that song problem. Let me make a little comment here. I have sung at my end, and so I'm looking to see what else is happening. Folks, we see your comments there. Let's see what happens. Are you guys hearing me? All right, Hazel says she's hearing loud and clear. Pollyann says she's hearing loud and clear. So it may be some folks who need to turn up their volume or something. Make sure you all have your sound fixed clearly, because folks are saying they're hearing us clearly. So let's see what is happening. We are discussing this evening the PPP's political agenda, the victimization and prosecution of Guyanese. This is a special In the Ring program to focus specifically on this, because we keep seeing systematically, day after day, the prosecution of our people. And it is only so much that people can take. It is only so much that people can take. And we're saying that we're tired now. We are absolutely tired now. And so we are going to move to the next level, folks. I'm privileged for all those persons who are joining us. I see De Freitas, Jacqueline De Freitas, and Marvel Schultz, and Pauline Grant, Hazel King, Juliet Bernard, Deborah Lynch, Paula Gilbert, Edwin Trotman, Richard Walcott, all of you folks who are joining us this evening. We are happy to have you, and we encourage you to share our live stream, whether you're joining us on Twitter, you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook. The price of admission is to share the live stream, and we hope that we have Nima Fluke Best back with us very, very shortly. But while we wait on Nima, let me show you what were some of the promises made by the fraudulent PPPC administration, and we can pick it up from here. Of course, some of what they would have promised did not age well at all.
Because I know that the campaign on the social media to do with witch hunt, and somebody put up a list of people going to be fired, what was called a blacklist and so on. I want to assure Guyanese that we are not here to take away food from people. We are not here to take public servants who have been working hard in the system. We are not dealing with the public servants, whether they're cooks or drivers or secretaries or clerks. If they're political appointees in the system, as I've said, then we are asking them to resign. And if they do not, they will be getting letters of termination.
Well, we know now that this was a lie, because political appointees were terminated, as well as hard-working Guyanese. Over 1,000 hard-working Guyanese were dismissed from the public service. Hard-working Guyanese were dismissed and terminated from the public service. So we know that this didn't age very nicely at all. This was a total and blatant lie. I'm gonna play it again for those of you who are now joining us. It was a blatant lie.
The campaign on the social media to do with witch hunt, and somebody put up a list of people going to be fired, what was called a blacklist and so on. I want to assure Guyanese that we are not here to take away food from people. We are not here to take public servants who have been working hard in the system. We are not dealing with the public servants, whether they're cooks or drivers or secretaries or clerks. If they're political appointees in the system, as I've said, then we are asking them to resign. And if they do not, they will be getting letters of termination. Because I know that the campaign on the social media...
There's where we are. They started with lies. That was on, I think, the 7th day of August. That was a big, fat lie, folks. That was a big, fat lie by this administration, because not only were political appointees, quote unquote, political appointees fired, but also there were lots and lots of Guyanese who were also fired. For instance, they have been firing even their own people. On the 31st day of December, 60 persons from the Wales Sugar Estate were fired, right? And over 1,000 plus public servants were terminated. So that was a lie. That didn't age very well at all. That was a big, fat lie, folks. And we have to call it for what it is. This is the fraudulent PPP that has been firing Guyanese. 6 months on, Guyanese are still being fired. still being fired. 6 months on,
We are
still
not
being
in.
fired. I want to play for you another another big fat lie, another big fat lie by the PPP, and you can judge for yourself, right? They came into office promising one thing, and 6 months later, folks, you can tell us what the scorecard is. 6 months on,
We are
you can
not
tell
in
us
a
what
witch
the
hunting
scorecard is.
exercise. We are not in any witch hunting exercise. Let me make that very clear. We are going to act professionally. The commissioner has assured us that he and his team would continue to act professionally. They would act professionally. We are not in a witch hunting exercise.
You ever hear
We
lie,
are not
folks?
in any witch hunting exercise. Let me make that very clear. We are going to act professionally. The commissioner has assured us that he and his team will continue uh, to act professionally. They would act professionally.
Yep,
We are
that
not
was the
in a
promise.
witch hunting.
That was the promise. But we know something else obtains. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back MP Nima Flu Bass. Nima, we were just bringing viewers up to date with statements that were uttered by Gail Teixeira, the parliamentary
Vice
minister of
President
parliamentary affairs, or
Ali
some nonsense,
personally.
who is responsible for a great many things legally and illegally, and she had promised that only political appointees would be terminated. But we know for a fact that lots and lots, hundreds of Guyanese who are not political appointees were terminated. There we had the then presidential candidate for the PPC promising professionalism, and all were lies. Your thoughts, Nima?
Well, as Guyanese, good evening again. So those didn't hear me at the first, it's nice to be here with you. Um, if Guyanese are observing what is happening, for the longest while you recognize that Ali would say one thing today, and tomorrow somebody else is saying something else. So he probably is talking about his vision and his dreams, but it is not the reality of what PPP stands for. I think that's the problem we're having there.
And ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our MP out of Region 10, Member of Parliament, German Kagera. German, we're talking about the victimization and prosecution of Guyanese by the fraudulent illegal PPPC administration. Out of Region 10, Member of Parliament, German Kagera. German, we're talking about the victimization and prosecution of Guyanese. German, you might need to turn down the audio here, and I'm getting a feedback or a delay, whichever one.
I don't know.
Jump right in there, German. We're going to take it as is.
What was the question?
No, I'm saying we're talking about the PPP's victimization and prosecution of Guyanese. They did promise that there will be no witch hunting. They did promise to be professional. But what we're seeing currently unfolding before our eyes is victimization and prosecution of hundreds of Guyanese.
Well, that is true. That is self-evident. There's a plethora of examples where mass Guyanese would have been the victims of the acts of the PPP, and it shows that they're definitely going against what they would have said to the Guyanese populace in the embryonic stage of them and entering into office illegally, I must say. So the line of the PPP has become a fine art, so to speak. So one cannot really determine if they're saying the truth or not, because it's always a question mark when they speak. And as a result of that, countless Guyanese, including mass amount of young people, would have felt the blunt of the actions of the PPP. They continually lie to the Guyanese population, and we're seeing it every single day while they are in office. And
Point taken. And let me,
I too was a victim of their lies by the Minister of Labor, um,
tell us about that,
Honorable.
German. Tell us about that. Because it's important that our Guyanese folks understand the kinds of lies that are being peddled and fake news and false information, misinformation, and disinformation by this
That is
fraudulent
given.
administration. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the minister is claiming that I was the recipient of funds from a SLED project initiated by the Ministry of Social Protection under Honorable Amna Ali. Now, I have never applied for any project, no SLED project under the ministry, so I could never have been a recipient of any funds for the ministry. And it would have been so simple if the minister would have done his due diligence. The minister is really a reflection of the caliber of ministers the PPP would have chosen. He is a true Don Stug, so to speak. I mean, a simple call to the region administration, you would have known who who was the beneficiary of the contract, who received the funds for the contract, and then you would have, if you looked at the contract, you would have been able to determine if the contract satisfied the requirements, because the monies had to be give that was warranted to the RDC, and the RDC had the responsibility to monitor the project, and the monitoring of the project was in a phase by phase basis, where the engineers had to go on site and see if the scope of work for the contract was being followed before they released the funds, and that was done. So he come and talking about misappropriation of funds, making wild and callous statements with nothing to substantiate. And as a result of his wildness, he will have to face the court, because it is indeed a defamation of my character, my reputation. I mean, we
Precisely.
have some people in the
Precisely.
community saying how Fagir is a fraud. How can I be a fraud and I have never been involved in anything like that? So my reputation is already being put to question by a lot of members within the society, within my own community, Linden. Even though a lot of persons don't believe it, some do. And it is a result of the lies that the minister would have told. And as a
Yeah.
result of that, I'm going to be taking legal action against him, as well as the media houses that would have carried this. We need to really hold the fourth estate to a higher standard, including elected officials. They cannot be making wild and unsubstantiated statements that can ruin one's character, one's reputation, and one's image.
Chairman. We're joined
That's
by
so
Member of
true.
Parliament, Twitter Finance. We were talking of the hundreds of Guyanese who have been dismissed from the public service. The fact that Gail Teixeira and Irfan promised no witch hunting, promised to be professional. We also talked about not only the hundred of Guyanese dismissed from the public service, but the fact that this was an administration who condemned us when we right-sized the sugar industry. And just in January, just rather the end of December 31st, they dismissed from Wales alone 60 persons from the Wales sugar estate. But there was,
Mm-hmm.
we had lots of foreshadowing of what was to come, because we did see Glenn Hanuman at the courts this morning, and he was one of them who were on the court, who was on those steps at the Hatfield Street GCOM location, saying to mark the face. When we get into power, they must know that the job's in
Yeah.
jeopardy. So they were already telegraphing what was coming. And we had Edgel, who was promising sleepless nights to public servants. And so the folks, for
He's
instance, at the
delivering.
Commission should have known what was coming, because the folks at the Forestry Commission having lots of sleepless nights currently. Rita?
Oh, well, actually, Cheryl, when I came in, Jarman was speaking about the issue that with him, and the fact that the minister would have made some very damning allegations to him. And what I want to say about that is, Jarman, you would have said that it is damaging your credibility, basically, and that is their intention. Other there is no other aim of the PVP when they put these things out. Everything that they put out, the slander that they use their media houses to spread, these things are with the intent, the sole purpose of damaging the character and tarnishing the credibility of the coalition representative. There is nothing else to be done. I tell you this because, and I can go as far as saying that there are persons out there that are so gullible that they're going to hear it and they're going to be like, oh my God, this is what happened. And they will not go, they will not look to to validate and to verify evidence or anything like that. And the PvP knows,
Precisely.
they know that there are persons out there that does not want to go and do the work and to actually see what is credible information and what isn't credible information. So when they put slander out there, it's just left at surface value, and whatever is said from the beginning is actually left as the gospel truth in a lot of persons' mind. And that's why I support you 100% when you said you're going to challenge it in court, because we need to hold the media houses accountable. Persons cannot just go putting things out there that they just for the propaganda and just for the sensationalism of having a few extra views on your page, a few extra like to the report that you posted. And that's what it is. I spoke a little bit of the whole sensational news and the fact that the PvP, that's their method, from one bit of sensational news to the next. They don't care if it's propaganda. They want to advance the credibility of the leadership of the coalition. And if you don't challenge them and march them up the court steps, they will not stop.
Precisely. German?
Most definitely, I must agree with my colleague, and definitely I would want to encourage not only elected officials but members of the public who are reading these fallacious articles that a lot of media houses are carrying, and if they realize that the reputation is going to be questioned by their fellow colleagues, by members of the public, they need to take these actors to court. um, I mean, it's four media houses would have carried this story. Not one of them saw it fitting. And it brings into question the level of professionalism with respect to the craft of journalism. I mean, a simple phone call could have clarified all of these doubts. Not because the ministers say that you think it's true, you think it's gospel. The minister is a politician with questionable traits, so to speak. I mean, eh, a man who values what he's going to be putting out there would definitely want to check it. But the journalists, I hold them even at a higher regard, because you are feeding the public information, and the public depends on the information that you put out.
Yes.
And you should
Yeah.
endeavor as professional journalists to ensure that the information that you give is credible, it is evidence based, and all they had to do was pick up a phone and call the ministry, call the RDC, because this money was warranted from the ministry to the region, and the REO, who is the accounting officer, could have answered any question that they would have given. I must applaud the young journalist that we have right here in Linda, Ms. Vanessa Braffett, who recently launched her own media platform, Info 10, and she would have done exactly what I'm saying. She called the minister, she called me, she called the REO and other actors involved to get the essence of truth behind this whole fiasco, and simply saying that this is basic journalism um, tenants, so to speak, and it
Yeah.
wasn't
And
followed.
you're
And as a
absolutely
result
right.
of that, yes,
German, you're absolutely right, because in the fight for true democracy, the media has a part to play, and it's not just regurgitating what either side says, but doing the investigative work, doing the journalistic work, to pursue the truth wherever that truth leads. And for in similar to your case, in David Patterson's case, I haven't seen too many of the media houses, for instance, doing the background work to say this matter was already litigated in 2019.
exactly.
The police would have cleared Mr. Patterson from these allegations. And the police own legal advisor at that time was Claudette Singh, said in a legal advice to the police that she doesn't see any evidence of corruption or anything untoward here. But I don't see a lot of media houses zeroing in on those issues.
But the problem is, Jared, is that we have an issue in Guyana, and I would have recognized it a whole lot with my stint in the realm of media. And what I found is that we have we don't really practice journalism in Guyana that much, and I must commend the few persons that are out there, actual journalists, actually doing the research and going out and getting the information as true journalists. But what we would find that happens here, the majority of persons are just reporting. You just feed some information and it's just thrown out there as a news report, just regurgitating surface information and not persons going into the depth of what is going on. And that is very, very, very sad. But with all of that, I can say that there's several instances. If anybody, I mean, you have a viewership right now, and someone would have to be lying to themselves if they would not admit that in Guyana you can pick up a newspaper or you can open a news report and you would know where it is biased to. That is the fact. That is the reality on the ground as it is. And I can call name if you go to the newsroom site, you know that you never see something positive about the coalition on that site. And I challenge someone to tag me in something positive in news on the newsroom site about the coalition, because these media houses are just blatantly aligned to one particular political party. So journalists, even good journalists, being put under the managerial structure of such organizations, would be forced to fit into the realm of how it's done there. But what I can say
A
further
bad
to
culture,
yes, what I can
bad
say further
journalistic
to
culture. Yeah.
that is that you would have remembered before, prior to 2015, how journalists and reporting and media houses were treated in Guyana by the PPP when they were in office back then. And I can point out the fact that there was a very horrific incident that even went down at Kaieteur News. Right. So with all of that and the history that we had of journalism basically being muzzled in the country when it comes under the People's Progressive Party, it is no surprise that when they're in office again, that journalists will act in a certain manner, or the lack of action from journalists more so. And it is very sad. So we have to think about all those factors when we want to find a solution, and we have to look at the cause and effect, because that's as far back as we need to go.
Yeah, and German Judah said something that was very, very important. That it seems that as though as soon as you go on a news site, you tend to know what slant they are going to take. Guyana Times is a prime example. Newsroom is a prime example. And again, if we really want true democracy, then all of these components of democracy have to be examined. The fourth estate, the media, journalism, has to be examined, criticized, interrogated the very same way you would do a government or an opposition party or parties. And this seems to be seeping over into the court. It seems that when certain matters go before the court, long before the judge even gives the ruling, you already know where it's going. We already know in a sense, when some matters come before the DPP, for instance, what is likely to happen, German. I mean, we aren't silly, and we are looking at these issues. Case in point, German, we saw persons, Rita and German, under investigation. Irfan Ali had 19 fraud charges. Nandalal was on charges for stealing law books. He said they were a gift to him by the previous administration, part of his contractual agreement with his then government. But they don't afford Mr. Patterson the same gift privileges. $2 million was the cost for Anil's law books. Ashley Singh was also on the investigation with Winston Brasington for undervaluing land. Those matters were deemed by the Chief Justice to have to be indictable issues, tribal issues, and yet we see the DPP drop all of those charges. Claudette Singh was on private criminal charges. Those charges were dropped. So we tend to see the same thing. The narrative that is developing is once a PPP person comes before the DPP for advice, we know what is going to happen. Thoughts?
It's I think German is getting problems
Yes,
with his.
Germany has some issues. Go ahead, Rita.
No, you're very right on Sherrod, and the fact that what is most alarming is that everyone could see it. It's so blatant. It's so barefaced. There's no attempt to hide and no attempt to go through a seemingly credible pathway to get to these results. They don't care how it's done. They do things to show that, hey, I'm gonna do it, and there's nothing that nobody else could do about it. And I think that is the road the PPP went down prior to 2015, and that's why they were voted out of office in 2015. Because in everything that they did, they failed to acknowledge that although they have power, they did not acknowledge that they were given that power, and the same way in which they were given the power was taken away from them. So now when they went back into office, I mean, they didn't change their stripes, not a bit. So, and
No.
Guyanese are here, they're looking on, and even persons that have legitimately gone to the polls on March 2nd and voted for the PUB. I've heard tons of complaint. Persons can't believe, persons I'm talking about ardent supporters of the PPP that would have been voting for the PPP since their grandmother and great grandmother, and just a family tradition, as a lot of people vote in Guyana in that manner. And those persons would have said, they thought after the PPP would have been out of office for 5 years, they would have come back and they would have changed their ways. But they are so surprised that they came back, and we went 5 years prior. We took 5 years. We're 5 years backwards
Yeah.
today than
Yeah.
we were.
In 5 months. Yeah.
Correct. And that is the truth. And what I can tell you about that is that the PPP will be reminded again by the people that the power that they have is power that is loaned to them by the people. They are part, they're sorry. They're not put there to abuse and become dictators as we see them become. I'm very, very concerned with some of the actions of some of the ministers. I mean, we can talk about the DPP and what's going on there, but also I know we would have covered a lot on Anil Nandlal, uh, not Anil Nandlal, sorry, Nigel Dharmlal, and his actions, his blatant disregard for every single thing under the sun. The fact that he had grown powerful overnight, Sheridan, is something that I actually am monitoring closely, because he is a monster that is being created within the PPP that the PPP will not be able to handle themselves. And I dare say that I know that there are several persons within the PPP that cannot stand him. He is a monster that is being created that they cannot handle. He is out of control. German is back.
and I'm very thankful. German, we're still on the issue of these folks that come before the DPP who seemingly to get off. You can do whatever you want to do. You can undervalue land. You can rip off the government. You can be corrupt. But if you come before this DPP and this PPP, you get off. Well, the man who thief a little red cake in the market, going down for 6 months, the man that got a little spliff or a little joint, going down for 3 years. All right, we have to complain to GTNT for the internet in Linden. We're going to hold for German.
Like I said, it was way better. It was way better. Thanks, Cher. Christopher hinted that during our program times, like the internet gets worse.
Conveniently so. Folks, while we're at this junction, we encourage you to share our live stream wherever you are. Share it to your Facebook profiles, share it to your pages. You can give your comments. We are grateful for all of you having joined us. German. All right. Drita, you go right ahead. German look like so he's gonna.
I was mentioning something just now. If you don't mind going back on that.
Go right ahead.
you were just mentioning something. I want you to go back to that. Just repeat what you were saying just now, please. I think you're on a very important point.
I was talking about how it is that the complexion of the judiciary seems to be changing radically with the advent of the PPP, or the second coming of the PPP. It seems that you can almost know how the case is going to be ruled on. It seems as though when PPP come before this, their file is brought before this DPP, that she's going to rule that, or the case is just going to drop, because in none of the cases we have mentioned has the DPP given any reason why those cases were dropped. Not in Irfan Ali's 19 fraud charges case, not in Andalal law book thieving case, not in Ashney and Winston Basington undervaluing state lands fraud case, not in Khalid Singh's private criminal charges case. They were just dropped without any reasons.
But Sharon, people can't give reason. You can't. The DPP cannot invent a reason when a reason does not exist, and that is the truth behind the matter. These matters, we know that these cases were dropped on insistence. We have to be naive to not accept that that's the way it was done. We all know Guyanese throughout in the diaspora here on our shores, everyone knew that the reason that the charges were dropped is because instructions were given for the charges to be dropped. Persons do not care to give reason, and the DPP can't just go and make up these reasons overnight. It doesn't work like that.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. German, are you with us now?
Yes, I am. I'm now hearing you.
Right there, German.
I heard, I did hear some aspects of the conversation with respect to the criminal charges being dropped by the DPP's office. Now, truth be told, I don't want to get into making allegations concerning the DPP and our office. I don't know who would have advised or who would have prepared those cases to be submitted for those charges to be dropped. But what is being put to the public and the general public's perception is that the office, in some regard, is not acting in a fair and balanced manner. And the fact that the judiciary doesn't have the confidence of the population, it is indeed a worrying situation.
Correct.
So the public,
Correct.
I mean, when one recourse, court is brings and basically society to respect democracy being the court is the court is for and fairness. If the population, a large amount of the population, has lost as large concern to the entire state of affairs of how we proceed as a society, because it is the court that we all should be running to get justice. And if a large section of the population hold the view that the courts and the judiciary cannot give them justice, then that is very sad. And I think the DPP office affecting the bar association and lawyers as lawmakers who in the National Assembly and part of Parliament should really do something to change the perception on it. And this is also where the media comes in, because the media also plays a pivotal role in keeping the society not only informed, but keeping lawyers, to keeping all of the institution in check. And the media is doing a job in art. I mean, I don't know they're doing that because they want to benefit from state funds with respect to having ads. But some of them are losing the whole objective of what the media should be representing. So I hear you, and I understand the views, because it's the views that you hear and is a reflection of what you're hearing from masses here. some may agree, some may
Yeah.
disagree, but is our reality in present day Guyana. The confidence of the judiciary does not enjoy and it is indeed a worrying situation. And I trust with the passage of time, the confidence can be restored. But I trust that we as members of parliament, I trust that the media and all other institutions, all other stakeholders within the community, the religious community, the business community, must lend a voice and say we have to fight this. The society must have confidence in a fine arbiter for justice, which is the judiciary, as well as the office of the DP, so to speak.
Thanks, Gemma Sherman. Moving along, let's look at those persons who are being prosecuted and don't enjoy the favor of the DPP of having their own charges dropped. We see several persons to date. We have Mr. 𝐒𝐏 𝐑𝐢𝐧𝐠. He is currently being prosecuted by the DPP. You know, these would have started out as private criminal charges, and now the DPP has taken over these charges. Claimant Mingo, you have Roxanne Myers, the deputy CEO of 𝐓𝐡𝐞, the deputy chief elections officer. You have Enrique Levan, chef in February. Christopher Jones, our very own Christopher Jones, had scores upon scores of police swoop down on his house. James Bond is being investigated. David Patterson is being investigated. Colvin Heath London is being investigated. Royston Adams is being investigated. And the list goes on. You have persons like, for instance, Walter Lawrence, who's being investigated, Carol Joseph, and you name it. Dr. Vandas Charles is also being investigated. When you look at it, when you look at the pictures side by side with whose charges were dropped, with no questions asked, no reasons given, and who charges are being pursued against and who's being prosecuted, it paints a kind of inescapable narrative. Your thoughts? Rita?
Oh, sorry, I thought German was
Agree.
coming.
I have to agree
German
with
is on.
sure.
German's audio is coming and going. So go right ahead, Rita.
Okay. Yeah, we can all see that again, as Sherrod. It's clear as day. I've said it 100 times. The PP is very barefaced in what they're doing. They don't care if they are just prosecuting on persons of African descent. They don't care if the persons that the charges are being dropped are East Indian people. That's what they intend to do. The PPP, I don't want to just, I want to watch my words carefully on this one. But we have had a lot to deal with as a country. We were born into a country that is racially divided, and we have seen the brutal force of politics when it comes to racism in Guyana, and the PPP uses racism as a platform to propel their interests and their efforts. This is no different right now. Trying to suppress one race whilst trying to empower the other is the ultimate goal of the PPP. That's how they are. That's how they are able to keep themselves viable as a community. Because without the racist divide, people will not exist anymore. That is the truth. Here. I'm getting a feedback. I'm not here.
I'm hearing you. Let me see if I can take German. I think German is having some trouble. Right ahead, Rita.
Yes. I'm still getting that.
I don't know how I can help, but I wanted to add there that nothing seems new here with this playbook. For instance, as you know, Freddie Kissoon, when he was thinking correctly, wrote a very, very scathing criticism of the PPP's almost 23 years tenure. when he spoke about, let me get the title of the piece correctly for you, because I want to be accurate. It was a paper he had done, a scholastic paper for the University of Guyana, and this was presented at a conference in 2010. And the title of that paper, I think, was Ethnic Power and Ideological Racism, Comparing Presidencies in Guyana by Frederick Kissoon. And he was a lecturer at the university at this time. And what he said of the PPP government then seems to hold true. And which is why I keep saying it is as though they want to go back to this period. The future augurs nothing good for them, and they want to go back to this period, this very, very dark period that we call the Troubles. David Granger coined that phrase to describe a period in the Jagdeo presidency, the Troubles. And this is what Kissoon said. This is 2010, and he's writing prior to that about what took place. And Kissoon says, there is a relentless, almost frenetic process of African disappearance in all dimensions of substantial power. And this decrease is a result of governmental edicts, policies by the ruling elites, and attitudes of Indian power brokers. That seems as relevant today as it was 10 years ago. And that's tremendously sad. Truth, your audio might be off. Great.
Hear me now?
Yes.
What I can say about a particular piece of work that Mr. Kissoon did is if you were to read that document, because I had my fair read of it, and what I can tell you is what happened then, what his description of the events that unfolded then in that period, it's a direct replication. It's like a carbon copy that we're seeing today when the PPP took office for this term again. It's like a carbon copy of events. Everything is like the PPP have this one playbook that they're using, and this is the way in which it shall be done. And we will not have anyone around us that is of this ethnicity. We will not empower anyone that is not within our circle. And that is because he was very, very in depth. Part of that report even spoke about someone that was an ambassador and that person's son being placed at one of the ministries, and he was very, very in depth in that piece of documentation that he did, which is very shameful that he has abandoned that cause with all that research that he had put into this. Today he speaks nothing of this. He speaks as though it doesn't exist anymore, that this is not research that he had done.
Correct. As a matter of fact, part of the research here in looking at the friends and family that permeated the PPP's government of the past, he said Lisa Ramatar, daughter of Donald Ramatar, she heads the Justice Improvement Project at the High Court without any official training in law. Alexi Ramatar works for the Office of the President. Irfan Ali, before he became minister, was in charge of the CDB projects at the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Ali has purchased huge chunks of divested Lenora estate. Ripudaman Prasad, executive member of the PPP, his son 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is in charge of the computer networking for the governmental systems in the country. Mr. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 Prasad is now reputed to be one of the richest young men in Guyana, buying the building that housed the Venezuelan Cultural Institute, and has set up a huge consultancy service that is patronized by the state. 𝐓𝐡𝐞's sister has risen in the ranks of doctors at the Georgetown Hospital and is now in charge of a section of the institution. And this was in 2010. He was talking about 𝐓𝐡𝐞 Prasad. 10 years later.
And look what's going on. You know, Sheridan, it's crazy. But when we talk about that, it's like this whole concept.
Let's just welcome Rickford Burke, who is now joining us. Rickford, welcome and good evening. You've joined the discussion at just the right time.
Well, good night, Rickford. What I was just going to mention to you, Sharad, is that it's very interesting that Mr. Kisun in 2010 would have written so much about the PPP and the family tree of the PPP, basically. And what I can tell you further is that I know that there was a lot being said today in the media from this guy, Terrence, concerning the banking system and
Yeah.
so forth.
Yeah.
And all of that, it had me thinking to some research that I started doing. Some research that I started doing a couple months ago, because what you would realize, what I realize is that the PPP have constructed a system in which they control, and there is like a family and friends affair when it comes to the money market in Guyana altogether. The PPP controls the money market to the extreme, and what you would see is that the various agencies and the boards, the board of directors that are involved within the money market in Guyana, you will see, for example, you look at the board of the Bank of Guyana, and then somebody there have some relationship to somebody at another board that is a part of the same institution and that circle. So in essence, that they have the power to block everybody and anybody that they want to block out of that system. And it's some research that I started doing a few months ago, and I'm going to be very much diving into that as much as I possibly can moving forward.
Precise information that we need. Rickford, a very good evening again, and welcome. We're discussing the political agenda of the PPP, the victimization and prosecution of Guyanese. And I know, Rickford, this is an area where you almost, and well, I was going to say almost, you're an expert in this area, understanding the mindset of these fraudulent, illegal folks. Rickford?
Well, I'm sorry to join you late. Good night, everybody. Good night to your listeners. Well, this is something I've been discussing for the past 20 years or 23 years and more. The PPP's playbook is to marginalize anybody that's not supporting them, and particularly if you don't look like their base. What is distressing to me is that they've come back with the same playbook. This is a new Guyana. This is a new Guyana. We have young people who have become of age and who are now in their adulthood, who possibly don't understand what happened the last 23 years, why all of these people were murdered by PPP death squads and there have been no justice, don't understand how they could have been going to school and interacting and intermarrying people across all cultures, ethnicities, and races. And now the PPP is preaching this biasness and this rank partisanship that's rampant in their circles now, and so it's difficult to comprehend where the hate is coming from that they're advocating, and the fact that they think they have international backing based on what happened with elections. They're on a rampage, right? They're just arresting black politicians and charge them so as to marginalize them and neutralize them politically. They're arresting GCOM officials so as to neutralize their impact on the elections petition currently that is sub judice. They are marginalizing Afro-Guyanese and other supporters of the APNU coalition. They're harassing public servants, charging lawyers, charging CEOs of companies, going after people for gifts and whatever it is, when they were known as one of the most corrupt governments in the world. The problem, Sharad, is that when the APNU-AFC government was in power, they did nothing about these things. President Granger was governing in terms of a Western-style democracy, right? And the PPP is just a party that is committed to hardcore communist autocracy, right? So they're ruthless, and I believe that you must be ruthless with them as well. And until we could stop them politically and have an eye for an eye, they're going to continue to be ruthless. They're going to continue to marginalize people. They're going to continue to charge people because they want to flip the corruption script on the coalition. So everything they find, they're trying to call in the police. They're abusing the police force. And now they want to call for unity as we confront the Venezuelan crisis. I have a view on that.
Yeah.
They went and picked that war that we're seeing right now with Venezuela, and I've said it before on programs. When we saw Mike Pompeo come to Guyana and that whole charade that they had, we knew since then what would be the repercussions of those actions and the way in which the Venezuela government would respond to those actions, and that's what we're seeing here today. That was an issue that was aggravated by the PPP, and that's what I can say.
We are right, Sheridan. As I'm on your program, I see some members expressing concern for the statement that CGID put out. In my view, that I've been expressing, listen, I believe that every Guyanese has an obligation to defend our birthright, defend our country, defend our nation against aggression from foreign countries. That's not a debatable topic. But we live in a country right now that is divided. We live in a country where half the population doesn't recognize the government as a legitimate government, the PPP regime. We live in a country where the PPP regime doesn't believe that half of the population are entitled to constitutional rights enshrined for citizens. We live in a country where the PPP wants to marginalize half of the country. And the PPP is disobeying the Constitution by not adhering to the mandates and the provision of the Constitution to consult with the opposition leader. We have a national crisis, and they have not met with the opposition leader yet. But they're calling for national unity. Yeah. In the meantime, their supporters are killing out Black people, right? They want to charge Black people and opposition supporters. I don't even like the term opposition, but the legal opposition. And they're calling for unity. They want these Ghana Defense Force officers, most of whom are Black, to go and defend the country while they're killing their relatives and marginalizing their relatives and denying them a pay raise because they're Black. So it's against that background that my argument is, if you want national unity and for us to stand together, you have to create the condition and engender national unity and national harmony. If not, go to hell. Don't come and tell us about national unity when you're killing us, when you don't believe that we have rights as citizens. Right? I'm not preaching division. Yeah. I'm responding to the circumstances that the PPP has created in our country that has caused us to be divided. We have an internal war. The PPP is waging a war on half the population, right? And now we have this external threat. In order for us to come together, they have to reverse that. They have to reverse the war on Afro-Guyanese and other persons who support the 𝐓𝐡𝐞. That must be a precondition to returning our state to normalcy so we can together, indivisibly, confront and beat back and reject the challenge from Venezuela, the crisis from Venezuela.
Folks, we are at program time, but for our viewers, I really want to beg your indulgence for another 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and let's wrap up.
Sure, I have to jump on Mark's show in a few minutes, but
okay, great. You jumped up. Rick, just before you go, let me get your response on what transpired just this afternoon. Venezuela issued a very stern warning to our country to stay out of their waters of the Essequibo region that has belonged to us since 1899. What are your thoughts?
Well, listen, Venezuelan aggression is baseless. This is Guyana's territory. We must reject it, not a blade of grass. Right? We must forcefully reject it. The problem is we have a problem internally. We don't have a legitimate government, and that illegitimate government has a war on half the population of the country that doesn't support them. I am saying, in order for us to come together as a country, they have to end the war on half the population. They have to create the conditions for national unity. If not, let them take their supporters that jump on social media and cuss us out every day to the border and confront the Venezuelans. I am opposed to this country that I live in, where I pay taxes. I'm opposed to the United States assisting the government of Guyana with the Venezuelan crisis, so long as we have an internal crisis. The international community must influence and prod the illegitimate government of Guyana to create a state of normalcy and tranquility in the country in order for us to first confront the external threat. Until then, I will continue to have my view that all of us should be confronting this Venezuela threat in unity, but we can't do it because we have the government waging a war
Government of disunity
of the country.
Thanks very much, Rickford, for stopping by. I know you're busy this evening, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to go if you need to. Drita, your final thoughts.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Rickford. Thanks for coming by. Your final thoughts, Drita.
The Venezuela issue, Shard, I think Rickford, I partly agree with what Rickford said. Is Venezuela, the government in Venezuela basically see that we have an internal struggle between the coalition and the government. So half of the country is fighting the other half of the country indirectly right now, and some case very directly. And anyone, any government that just not Maduro, but any president in Venezuela would see it as the opportune time to come and to flex their muscles and to see what is going on. Because what the Venezuelan government would have realized also is that the PPP had made they were very much in bed with the Trump administration, and now the Trump administration is out the door before they're even given a chance to make any inroads with the Biden administration. The Venezuelan government is doing all that it can in the meanwhile. But at that time, what I can say is that as a Guyanese, and not just as a Guyanese, I was born and raised here in Bartica. So what I can tell you is that when Venezuela is claiming territory, they're claiming my home where I belong to. They're claiming basically they're challenging my birthright as a citizen of Guyana with the claims that are being made right now. And that is not something as a Guyanese that I will tolerate. And that is not something that no Guyanese must tolerate. Like Rickford just said, we need to hold fast to the words and the lyrics of that song, not to blade the grass. And Venezuela issue is not an issue that is new. It has been around for generations, and we need to treat it with the same sense of unity that it was treated with before. But I agree partially with Rickford, not 100% with what he was saying about us moving forward in addressing this issue. Is yes, we have to have unity to go forward, but we cannot wait to be unified in order to fight this. We need to fight this today, right now. It needs to be fought. Our representation as Guyanese and our defense for our borders need to be something that we do right now. And that is how I would encourage all Guyanese to move forward in that direction. The US is, as we all know, when it comes to geopolitics, is a whole different discussion altogether that can take for hours to even get into to what the US will and will not support. And Venezuela's issue with the US is something entirely different. And those are things that we cannot discuss. The US government needs to know how they are working moving forward with the situation in Venezuela, the Biden administration. That is, but Guyana needs to project itself in a very independent state, as well as accommodating all help that is being offered from the US, because when we, like I said, when we speak of geopolitics, all these different factors come into play. But what I can say for the viewers out here right now, myself, you, and all Guyanese, Venezuela can't just come and claim a piece our land and waterways.
No,
It doesn't work like
not,
that. And
not
we need to treat it like Rick first said, it's just baseless. And let's move forward and be unified as Guyanese as we fight this.
great, fantastic. Well, we watch to see what will be the government's response to what the Venezuelans have said in this statement put out just today. It seems as though they're going to pass our Guyanese counterparts through their court system. We're waiting to see what the government's official response will be. Folks, as an update, we started the program by telling you that David Patterson was put on bail, $200,000 bail today, charged with fraud, allegedly defrauding the War Harbor Bridge of $160-something million. And we know that to be totally inaccurate and false and propaganda and everything that is bad, disinformation. And he is to return to court on February 15th. That is next month, the 15th day of February. We're going to continue to watch that. And you will see us making several pleas to you over the next coming days. And we ask you guys to participate. Your help is as integral to what we do as ever. And so we're going to ask you guys to sign up, to sign on, to come out, to do whatever you can. And when we do come and ask, that you lend a hand as we move this country forward. Rich, I want to thank you for spending this time with me this evening. I want to thank German as well. We know he had some internet issues there in Linden. We want to thank Rickford also for stopping by and giving us his thoughts on these many issues. Guyanese, hold the fort, stand tall wherever you are. This country is ours. It belongs to each and every one of us. You see wrong happening, you know, lift your voice, make a stand, and make sure you got the video for your phone on and send it to us as well. Folks, the COVID numbers continue to rise. Stay safe, social distance, wear your mask, sanitize, practice all of the COVID protocols that are in there for your, that are in place for your health, your safety, those of your friends and loved ones. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks, Jurita, and all the others for having the testicular fortitude for stepping into the ring and the intellectual aptitude for staying in. See you guys tomorrow evening. Thanks very much for joining. Stay safe.
Good night,
Stay
everyone.